Hey guys, so I am fairly certain that I have already done the Tombstone Stuffie how-to as a 4x4, and the 5x7 works exactly the same way, but the 6x10, 7x11, and 8x12 are way more bigger, and having all of this stuff as a fill would mean this takes forever. So the 6, 7, and 8 sizes, I am going to go ahead and make applique, and since it's different, I'm going to go ahead and do a video for it too. So just like everything else, you heap a piece of medium weight stabilizer, you throw it in the machine, and you run color stop 1, back after 1. Okay, so here we are. I don't know if you can see that light gray dye line. There you go. And all you're gonna do is you are going to float a piece of fabric or vinyl that covers that all the way. I'm gonna go ahead and put a couple of little pieces of tape to hold everything flat, because this next stitch is going to be a dye line for applique, and I don't want to have to fuss with my fabric coming up as I applique. So put this in and run color stop 2. That's going to be a dye line for applique placement. Okay, so there we go. We've got our dye line for the first little piece of applique, and we are going to float. I'm going to use some pretty iridescent glitter vinyl on this, and I'm going to put it right here. And I am going to use the teeniest little pieces of tape to hold it in place. And I'm going to throw it back in the machine, and I am going to run color stop 3 to zigzag that down, and we'll be back to cut that in just a minute. Okay, there we are. We've got our tack down for the first part of applique, and there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 whole appliques on this bad boy. So we are going to take our scissors, and we are going to get right in there. And remember, when applique cutting, you want to get absolutely as close as humanly possible. And on my appliques, if you accidentally snip those stitches, it's no big deal, because it's a zigzag with a bean under it, so it's not going to pull up on you. So we are going to snip all the way around, and if you're using applique scissors, it always looks like, oh my God, I'm cutting those stitches. No, you're not. The paddle is actually sliding you out and away from those applique stitches. Okay, and before you go, oh my God, I can't applique trim like that. That's just too much. You can do it. Practice makes perfect. Don't sweat it. Sharp scissors, and I highly recommend getting used to using applique scissors. Sharp scissors, sharp applique scissors are the key to a perfect applique every time. Now throw it back in the machine and run color stop 4, which gives you the dye line for your next applique. Okie dokie pokey, so we've got our dye line for our next piece of vinyl. Our next applique. You can use fabric, you don't have to use vinyl. I'm just, you know, I like being extra. So I'm gonna float a little piece of vinyl over that, and I'm gonna secure it. I'm gonna put it back in, and it's gonna do a zigzag, and then we'll trim. Okay guys, so we've got our zigzags for the skull applique, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut this one on camera, but the next 2 appliques, the other half bone and the big bone down at the bottom, big boned girl. I'm not going to come back and show you how this does. It's the same. You do a trim out, then you stitch, and it gives you a placement. Then you put your vinyl, and it does a zigzag. Then you come back and trim. Then you do a placement, and then you float, and then you zigzag, then you trim, and blah, 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 blah. You get the idea, right? And for you guys going, well, why didn't you just do all the placement stitches at once and all of the zigzags at once and then all of the satins at once? Well, it does do all the satins at once at the very end, but it doesn't do the placements or the zigzags, because I know a lot of you are scrap busters and you want to just grab a tiny little piece of vinyl that's just barely going to cover the placement stitch. So by breaking them up into 4 separate appliques, that helps you do that. All right, I will be back once everything is stitched out, and then we'll do the back. We'll cut, we'll turn, we'll stuff. Yay! Okay, so there we go. This is the 6x10 tombstone. all of our applique and stitches done. Now all we do is we float a piece of fabric on the top, good side down, and it's going to stitch together and leave us a turning hole. Back in a minute. And there we are, all stitched out. So all you do, and I don't know that I'm going to sit here and show you me cutting and stuffing and turning, and I just noticed this hole is a little big. So when you get the pattern, this is going to be closed up in a little bit more. The one big thing that you have to remember right here is that you want to leave yourself a tab so that when you do turn and stuff, you've got some material to fold over and grab onto for your stitch close. Okay? And then I will turn, stuff, and stitch and come back and show you the finished in just a minute. Our tombstone is done. So we're gonna flip it over and I'm gonna trim a couple of these little hairs. And if you've already watched the 4x4 cat video, you know we're gonna have all kinds of fun with this. We're gonna pop it out of our hoop. There we go. Now, the one thing I'm gonna fussy cut some of this so we're not having to arm wrestle a whole bunch of extraneous material and stabilizer while we do a good cut. We want to cut on the actual good cut about 1/8 of an inch, maybe even 1/4 of an inch away from our seam. And we're gonna do that on the back side. Woo, so we can see what we're doing. Now remember, we need to leave ourselves a turny flap. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut my turny flap first. Okay. And now I'm gonna go about cutting the rest of the stuffy about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch away from the stitch line. And I'm gonna have to come back that turn or that corner in. We're gonna need to trim that. And we're gonna need to trim that one. We're gonna need to put a little V in there so that when it does turn, it's got a nice, good amount of play for the fabric so it doesn't wrinkle on the outside. Okay, so I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna go almost to the bean line, almost to the bean line. And we're gonna make it a V cut like that. It's a little notch. It allows the fabric to pull and twist as it needs to. Now we are going to trim this guy right here. Okay, now we're gonna stick a finger in and we're gonna turn. And then we're gonna go through and we are going to poke out our corners very carefully. I learned on the cat, I learned on the cat that if you poke too hard, this minky is less stable or less strong than felt, and I poked right through the cat's foot and had to hand sew that closed. That was not a happy thing. Okay, I got my corners. Yep. All right. I don't know that I necessarily like minky for the tombstone, but okay. So now we're gonna stuff. And how much stuffing you use on these guys is entirely up to you. It's how poofy stuffy you want them to be. If you want them to be pretty stuffy, whatever, or just a little stuffy. Okay, I think for my tombstone that's stuffy enough. Now I'm going to fold this over and tuck it in like so also. Then I'm going to fold this and tuck it in as well. Then I'm going to grab some pins and I'm going to pin that shut. Like that. And like, oops, like that. And then I am going to grab my needle and I'm going to grab my thread. And I am going to whip stitch that bad boy closed. As soon as I find the other end of my thread, run away. There we go. There we go. Boom. 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 Trim off my knot. And there we go. And I'm going to start from this end, making sure I'm grabbing the fabric and not just grabbing the fuzz. And then see, there's nothing interesting going on here, folks. Just some hand stitching. And I'm getting a little too paranoid about grabbing that fabric, so I made that stitch really huge. Oops. Oh well. Hopefully when I fluff the fuzz, you won't even be able to see. Yep, I think the rest of the testing will be done on felt. Sorry, Heather. I am just not liking working with the Minky, and I'm sure the Minky is way cooler if you're, you know, a little kid and it's soft and it's squishy and it's lovely and da-da-da. But this is probably going to wind up doused in catnip oil and be a cat toy. And honestly, my cat does not care. Okay, and now we're going to tie off. Stop spinning it around. Oh. And I keep falling out of camera. Sorry, guys. I got a little bit of a different setup going on today. I decided I don't like it. There we go. Snip, snip. Snip, snip. Squishy, squishy. Puffy, puffy. Okay, that did not turn out too bad. There you go. There is your Cutie Tombstone 4x4 stuffie. Peace.